Welcome, wherever you are right now, whether you're lying in bed, preparing for rest, or simply looking to escape into something quiet and thoughtful. Invite you to join me on a slow, gentle journey back through time. This isn't history the way you may have learned it in school. There are no dramatic battle cries, no thundering speeches, no rousing music or flashing images. Just the slow rhythm of forgotten lives, the murmur of ancient streets, and the steady, unhurried flow of history as it really was. Tonight, we begin with something deceptively simple, a bath, but not the kind you know. Instead, we travel to ancient Rome, to the heart of its bustling cities, and beneath the domed ceilings of its grand bathhouses. There, marble echoes with the chatter of senators and slaves alike. Heated water flows through hidden channels, and the air hangs thick with steam, oil, and ambition. Yet, what appears refined and elegant at first glance often concealed a world of sweat, tension, and subtle discomfort. In this first segment, we'll explore why you might not last a single day in the strange, sweltering world of a Roman public bath. Afterward, we'll meet one of the empire's most cunning and tragic figures, whose life was as layered and steamy as the bathhouses themselves. Then, we'll descend into the ruins of a faraway Roman bath, long abandoned but full of silent clues. And finally, we'll walk alongside the elite, the patricians whose days drifted from marble courtyards to perfumed antechambers. But for now, let the world fade away. Imagine yourself in another time, and let the slow welcome, wherever you are, whether tucked beneath the gentle weight of your blanket or listening to the still hush of early morning, allow your body to settle. Let the tension loosen from your shoulders, and your thoughts begin to slow, like the quiet surface of still water. Tonight, we invite you to drift, not just into sleep, but into the softened haze of the past. Not the past of emperors and conquests. Not tonight. Tonight, we slip behind the grand facades of ancient Rome, not to watch the battles or the debates, but to feel what it was like to simply live there, to breathe its air, to walk its streets, to work, to bathe, to endure or enjoy its everyday rhythms, because history, at its core, is made not by rulers or wars, but by people. People who woke each morning to a world very different from yours, yet not so distant in the quiet moments between waking and sleep. And so, tonight, we'll spend 2 gentle hours wandering through one of the most curious and complex parts of ancient Roman life, the public bath. Yes, the bath, a place of water and stone, of ritual and routine, of heat and hierarchy, a place where the rich and poor alike gathered, not just to cleanse, but to socialize, to exercise, to sweat, and to be seen. But it was not serene, not always, because behind the marbled elegance of Roman baths was a world of constant labor, of furnace boys stoking fires before sunrise, of slaves scrubbing floors, slick with oil, of overcrowded chambers, thick with the scent of humanity and steam. And if you, a modern listener, were to find yourself dropped into that ancient world, you might not last a day. From blistering heat to rigid social codes, from unspoken rules to literal walls of class division, the public bath was both an escape and an ordeal. But that's just the beginning of our journey. After immersing ourselves in that world, steam rising, voices echoing, we'll step into the life of a powerful Roman who helped reshape the very idea of public bathing. Then we'll explore the strange, silent ruins left behind, what archaeologists have uncovered, and what still lies hidden beneath centuries of dust and stone. Finally, we'll ascend from the furnace to the forum and gaze into the cool, perfumed world of the Roman elite. While one class scrubbed tiles, another dined beneath frescoed ceilings, and tonight we'll walk through both. So, if your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your breath is slow, let it stay so. And know that history, real, quiet, textured history, will unfold around you like a warm mist. No tests, no textbooks, just the comfort of the past, gently retold. Let us begin. Warmth of the past begin to unfold. Imagine yourself waking not to an alarm, but to the distant creak of wooden shutters, the soft murmur of carts in the street, and the chatter of early footsteps on the stones below. The light filtering in is not electric. It is pale, filtered through clay tiles and rising dust. The air smells faintly of oil lamps, crushed herbs, and something earthy. Perhaps the neighbor's bread already baking in a small oven. You stretch slowly, adjusting to the stiffness of a straw mattress. You are a Roman citizen, not a noble, not tonight, but perhaps a craftsman, or a clerk, or a baker's assistant. You work hard, and your home is modest. Yet, as midday approaches, there is something to look forward to, a small luxury carved into your routine. A visit to the thermae, the public baths. The path to the baths, you leave your home around the 6th hour. What we would now call late morning. Outside, the city breathes with life. Mules clatter across uneven paving stones. Children dart between the legs of strangers. And shopkeepers shout prices over piles of figs and amphorae of wine. But the closer you get to the bath complex, the more the rhythm changes. The air grows warmer, subtly at first, and then more insistently so. You smell things, not all of them pleasant. A mix of wet stone, old water, body oil, and always sweat. Before even entering the gates, you pass vendors. They sell sponges on sticks, perfume, bread, dried fruit, and wine, diluted with honey and herbs. This isn't just hygiene. It's a full social outing. You hand over a small bronze coin, the entrance fee, and then you step inside. The ritual of the bath. First comes the apodidium, the changing room. It's echoey. Voices bounce off the plastered walls. There are rows of stone benches and niches carved for clothes and sandals. You undress fully. There is no modesty here. This is not a place for shame. You tuck your belongings into a cubby, and if you're lucky, you've brought a slave to watch them. If not, you eye your pouch warily. Theft is common, even in the most civilized empire. Now bare, you step into the palestra, the exercise yard. Here, the scent of effort is thick in the air. Men of all shapes and sizes perform calisthenics, box with leather gloves, lift stone weights, or wrestle, oiled skin gleaming under the sun. You join in, lightly, enough to get the blood moving, to earn the next phase of the ritual, the cleanse. Sweating, you walk toward the baths themselves. And now, the temperatures shift. The caldarium, a fiery chamber. The caldarium, the hot room, is a cavern of steam. As you enter, the warm mist hits your face like a wall. The floor is hot to the touch, heated by the hypocaust, an underfloor furnace system stoked by enslaved workers who live in the choking heat beneath the baths. The walls drip with condensation. You can barely see 10 feet ahead. Figures move in and out of the haze like ghosts. You hear low voices, splashes, and the soft hiss of water poured on hot tiles. Here you sit, you sweat, you rub scented oil into your skin, olive oil mixed with herbs like myrtle or lavender. You let it soften the dirt and grime. Then, using a strigil, you scrape the oil, sweat, and dirt from your skin. A slow, rhythmic process. If you're fortunate, a slave does it for you. If not, you manage yourself. The heat is relentless, and for a modern visitor, overwhelming. There is no timer, no cold drink, no air-conditioned lobby. There is only the heat, the noise, and the closeness of others. You wouldn't last long. The tepidarium and frigidarium. After the hot room, you enter the tepidarium, a warm, dimly lit chamber meant to ease the transition. The air is still humid, but bearable. You sit on a stone bench. You talk or listen to others talk. Politics, business, gossip, philosophy, it's all here. The bathhouse is Rome's great equalizer, and also its rumor mill. And then you brace yourself, because the next room, the frigidarium, lives up to its name. You plunge into cold water designed to shock the body. A Roman would find it invigorating, but to you, accustomed to regulated showers and plush towns of greatness. But Rome, at that time, was a city of shifting loyalties and rising ambitions. And for those with skill, loyalty, and timing, even the highest heights could be reached. Agrippa's early life was closely entwined with that of a rising star, Octavian, the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, the man who would one day become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. From their youth, Agrippa and Octavian were bound together by shared danger, ambition, and belief. Where Octavian charmed the Senate and maneuvered through politics, Agrippa organized, commanded, built. He was a general of immense ability. It was Agrippa who led Roman forces to victory at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, a crucial moment when the forces of Octavian crushed those of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. That battle, fought on wind-whipped waters, did not just end a civil war. It marked the end of the Roman Republic and the dawn of the empire. But Agrippa did not stop at military triumph. Once peace returned to Rome, he turned his mind to construction, order, and public welfare. He became aedile, a position in charge of the city's buildings, streets, and sanitation. And rather than treat the job as ceremonial, Agrippa dove into it with intensity. He repaired and extended aqueducts, bringing fresh, flowing water to neighborhoods that had gone without. He built new sewers, clearing out filth that had long clogged the veins of the city. He renovated streets, restored temples, and, most famously, he built public bathhouses where the people of Rome could cleanse, socialize, and heal. One of his greatest gifts to the people was free access to these baths. Not just a luxury for the elite, but a space for everyone. In a world divided sharply between patricians and plebeians, Agrippa's bathhouses were a kind of quiet democracy, where the poor could bathe next to the wealthy, and the city could breathe in unison. To Agrippa, infrastructure wasn't just brick and mortar. It was a reflection of Rome's soul and its strength. The great poet Propertius once said, he could have, because Rome did not just lose a man. Back through the tiled bathhouses, through the echoing pipes and crumbled arches, Marcus Agrippa built more than monuments. Imagine a young boy, not born in a marble villa, not draped in gold from birth. There are no statues of his ancestors, no family tombs etched in glory, only quiet fields, stone houses, dust roads winding through the Italian countryside. Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa was born around 63 BCE likely in a modest town far from the roar of Rome's forum. His family was equestrian, class of landowners and cavalrymen, respected but not aristocratic. He was Roman, yes, but not the kind of Roman destined by birthright for greatness. If Rome were a stage, he would have started in the wings. But Rome, at that moment in history, was anything but still. The Republic was trembling. The death of Julius Caesar was on the horizon. Senators whispered behind columns. Generals gathered armies, not for foreign conquest, but for power over one another. It was a time of civil wars, of broken allegiances and dangerous ambition. And in the background, Agrippa watched, quiet, observant, practical. He was not drawn to performance or spectacle, not to the roar of the crowd or the poetry of politics. He was drawn instead to the work, to logistics, to engineering, to the quiet, difficult art of making things function. He studied not just rhetoric and history, but strategy. How a wall holds back an army, how a road shapes a city, how water, clean and flowing, can prevent disease and ensure peace. When he came of age, Agrippa became a soldier, and not a reluctant one. He thrived under pressure. He listened where others barked orders. He measured the terrain, read the sky, learned the pulse of his men. In battle, he did not just fight, he coordinated, he predicted, he adapted, and then he met Octavian. Octavian, thin, young, brilliant, was the adopted son of Julius Caesar. He would later become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. But in these early years, he was a boy with ambition far larger than his frame. And he saw in Agrippa something rare, not just loyalty, but capability. Agrippa became not only his general, but his shadow, the one who ensured the ships sailed, the one who planned the retreats when battles turned, the one who executed victories again and again, not by luck, but by precision. In 31 BCE, at the famous Battle of Actium, it was Agrippa who commanded the navy. It was Agrippa who outmaneuvered the combined forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, while the poets told stories of doomed love and betrayal. Agrippa was coordinating supply lines. He was studying the winds. He was ensuring that Octavian would emerge as master of the Roman world. After the war, with peace restored and Augustus on the throne, Agrippa might have stepped away. He could have retired to a villa, built monuments to himself, written memoirs. But instead, he built. Rome had been shaken by war. Its streets were crumbling, its aqueducts cracked. Agrippa turned his focus to repair, not glory utility. He oversaw the construction and restoration of aqueducts that brought fresh water to millions. He designed new sewers, preventing the floods and foulness that plagued the city. He paved roads, he cleared slums, he ordered the planting of trees and the opening of public parks, and most memorably, he built baths. Public baths, not hidden behind palace walls, but open to all. Imagine a Roman laborer, exhausted from the fields, stepping into a caldarium, warmed by the fire Agrippa planned. Imagine a widow filling her jug from a fountain Agrippa restored. These were his monuments, not of marble, but of usefulness. And through it all, he remained humble. He refused triumphs that were offered. He avoided the jealous eyes of Rome's elite. He married into Augusta's family, not as a threat, but as an anchor. To Augustus, Agrippa was more than a friend. He was indispensable. And so, as we walk once more through the remnants of Rome, past the crumbling aqueducts and the mossy walls of ancient Baths, we are not simply surrounded by ruins. We are surrounded by Agrippa's Rome. A Rome that worked, a Rome that endured. Because while others sought to rule, Agrippa chose to build, and in doing so, he helped shape an empire. Agrippa was not flashy. He did not compose poetry that would be sung in marble forms. He did not seek the spotlight, nor did he crave applause from the masses. He was a man of quiet strength, brilliant in thought, and steadfast in action. In a city where rhetoric often outshone reality, Agrippa's genius lay in his dependability. When Octavian needed victories, it was Agrippa who delivered them not with grand speeches, but with calm precision. Consider the year 31 BCE, a moment that would shape the course of history. The Battle of Actium, the great naval confrontation where the forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra clashed against Octavian's fleet. Here, Agrippa was not just a commander. He was the mind behind the maneuver. His strategy, deliberate and exacting, shattered the enemy's navy, breaking the back of Antony's ambitions. Ships sank beneath the waves. Alliances crumbled. This battle was decisive. It secured Octavian's path to power. Octavian would soon become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, but Agrippa remained in the shadows, the silent architect behind the empire's foundation. While others donned crowns and laurels, Agrippa built the infrastructure of peace. Because Agrippa's greatest gift was not the sword, it was water. Water simple, flowing, life-giving. In a city of over 1 million souls, water was not a luxury. It was a necessity. Clean water meant health, safety, and the ability to sustain the sprawling population of Rome. Agrippa understood this deeply. He was an engineer as much as a soldier. He saw beyond battles and politics to the very lifeblood of a city, its aqueducts, fountains, and baths. Rome's aqueducts were marvels of engineering, some stretching miles across the countryside to deliver fresh water into the city. But by the time Augustus came to power, many of these had fallen into disrepair. Broken channels leaked precious water. Fountains trickled faintly or stood silent. Disease spread in stagnant pools. Agrippa took on the monumental task of restoring Rome's water supply. He ordered the repair of old aqueducts and the construction of new ones, bringing fresh, clean water to neighborhoods that had gone thirsty. He expanded the city's elaborate network of pipes, channels, and reservoirs. The Aqua Julia, the Aqua Virgo, the Aqua Alcitinus, some bore his mark. Together, they ensured that water flowed continuously, a steady heartbeat beneath the city's stone surface. But it wasn't just about engineering. For Agrippa, water was part of the Roman way of life. It was a symbol of civilization itself. He built public baths, not secluded pools for the wealthy, but expansive complexes open to all citizens. In these baths, people gathered to cleanse their bodies, yes, but also to socialize, relax, and even engage in business discussions. The baths were centers of community and health. Thanks to Agrippa's vision, the Romans enjoyed clean, heated water in their daily lives, a luxury rare in the ancient world. Imagine the Roman citizen stepping into the caldarium, the hot bath, steam rising, the scent of oils and herbs. Nearby, fountains splashed clear water, recycled from distant springs. These baths were not just for hygiene. They were places where the Roman spirit found renewal. Agrippa's work on water was revolutionary. It reshaped the city physically and socially. It improved public health by washing away filth and disease. It allowed Rome to grow bigger, denser, more complex. And all of this happened quietly, without the fanfare of military triumphs or political speeches. Yet, without Agrippa's water, without his infrastructure, the empire's grandeur would have been impossible. Rome's streets, forums, and villas relied on the constant, reliable flow of water. Beyond water, Agrippa's influence stretched to urban planning. He paved roads that linked distant provinces. He developed sewers that carried away waste. He planted trees and created public gardens, bringing nature into the heart of the bustling city. He was a man of action and of vision. It is tempting to focus only on emperors who sat on thrones, or generals who marched armies. But it is figures like Agrippa, builders, planners, engineers, who forged the real foundations of Rome. His legacy is not just in texts or statues, but in the very stones and streams of the city itself. When we think of Agrippa, we might picture him not in the marble halls of power, but standing beside aqueducts under a blazing sun, a man checking channels, adjusting plans, ensuring that the waters would flow uninterrupted. No poetry needed, no speeches required, because through water, Agrippa shaped the course of history. And for all the empire's battles, for all its politics, it was the steady flow of water that sustained it. So next time you think of Rome, the grandeur, the conquest, the spectacle, pause for a moment. Think of the man who understood that true power sometimes comes not from the sword, but from something as simple and profound as water. Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa. Not flashy, not famous, but indispensable. The silent architect of Rome's greatness. As Rome's brutal civil wars drew to a close, the city stood at a crossroads. The chaos and destruction that had riven its streets and shattered its institutions left a city exhausted, weary, and in desperate need of renewal. The once glorious capital, a sprawling urban tangle of brick and mortar, had seen better days. But Augustus, newly ascended and determined, envisioned a transformed Rome, a city reborn from brick to marble, a symbol of peace, power, and permanence. Yet such a vision required more than lofty words. It demanded infrastructure, stability, and beauty woven into the very fabric of the city. To turn this vision into reality, Augustus needed allies, men who could manage the immense task of rebuilding and restoring a capital that was the heart of an empire. Among these men, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa emerged as indispensable. Agrippa was appointed aedile, an administrative post often bestowed on young, ambitious politicians eager to make their mark. For many, it was a stepping stone to personal glory, a chance for grand gestures and fleeting popularity. But Agrippa approached the role with a seriousness and dedication that was rare. His ambition was not for showmanship, it was for tangible, lasting impact. He rolled up his sleeves and set to work. The roads of Rome, vital arteries for commerce and communication, were often neglected and damaged by years of turmoil. Agrippa prioritized their repair and maintenance, ensuring that the city's citizens and merchants could move safely and efficiently through the bustling streets. Potholes were filled, drainage systems cleared, and new paving stones laid. But the work was not merely practical, it was symbolic. The roads represented the lifeblood of the city, the connection between people, ideas, and goods. Fixing them was fixing Rome's pulse. Agrippa's efforts went deeper, literally and figuratively. He tackled the ancient drains and sewers that choked beneath the city's surface, clearing blockages that caused flooding and disease. These underground channels, often forgotten or overlooked, were vital to the health of Rome. Clean streets depended on effective drainage. Without it, waste and rainwater would pool and rot. Next, Agrippa turned his attention to the temples. These sacred spaces, dedicated to gods and goddesses who protected Rome, had suffered neglect and damage in the years of conflict. Repairing them was not only an act of piety, but also a way to restore civic pride and cultural identity. The temples, with their marble columns and intricate sculptures, were the city's spiritual anchors. But Agrippa's most monumental work lay with water, that precious life-sustaining resource that Rome both revered and depended upon. The city's aqueducts, massive stone channels snaking for miles across the countryside, were engineering marvels. They brought fresh, clean water from distant springs and hills into the urban heart. Yet after decades of unrest, many aqueducts were broken, clogged, or in disrepair. Water was scarce in some districts, fountains ran dry, public baths suffered. Agrippa undertook a vast restoration campaign. He repaired the ancient aqueducts, sealing leaks, clearing debris, and reinforcing their arches and tunnels. But he did not stop there. He expanded the network, extending water's reach to growing neighborhoods on the city's edges. He commissioned new reservoirs, vast underground cisterns, to store water and regulate its flow during droughts or surges. Rome's fountains, once silent and empty, began to gush again. Crystal clear water sparkled in the sun, spilling over stone basins and catching the light like jewels. This was no mere luxury. Clean water meant health. It meant sanitation. It meant that the people of Rome could bathe, refresh, and escape the grime of daily life. Public baths, once neglected, even dangerous due to unsanitary conditions, were revived as centers of social life and cleanliness. Romans of all classes could gather in these spaces to wash, converse, and relax. Bathing was transformed from a necessity into an experience of renewal and civility. Agrippa's work was foundational. It allowed Rome to grow not just in size, but in spirit. The city was no longer a chaotic jumble of broken pipes and dusty streets. It was a living organism, cared for and nurtured by hands dedicated to public service. To the Roman citizen waking each morning, these changes might have seemed subtle: a cleaner street, a flowing fountain, a steady supply of water in the home. But they were profound. They marked a turning point, the rebirth of a city. And all of this was orchestrated by a man who understood that power was not only wielded in battle or declared in speeches. True power was built in bricks and mortar, in channels and pipes, in the steady flow of water that sustained a civilization. Agrippa was the quiet force behind Augustus's vision. His legacy was the infrastructure that would support Rome's greatness for centuries to come. So, as you imagine ancient Rome, the grandeur of its forums, the bustle of its markets, the echo of footsteps on marble stairs, remember the unseen labor that made it all possible. Remember the man who repaired the roads, restored the aqueducts, and brought life back to the fountains. Remember Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, aedile, engineer, builder, and servant of Rome's rebirth. In the year 25 BCE, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa unveiled a marvel that would forever alter the urban landscape and social fabric of Rome. The Thermae Agrippi. This was not just another bathhouse. It was a revelation, a grand, sprawling complex dedicated to the public, designed on a scale that no one had yet dared to imagine. Before this, baths in Rome had often been small, private affairs, accessible only to the wealthy or attached to temples and palaces. But Agrippa's vision was different. The Thermae Agrippi was free to enter. open to any citizen who sought its waters. It was vast, encompassing not just rooms for hot, warm, and cold bathing, but saunas to sweat away tensions, sprawling gardens for leisure and contemplation, and even libraries where the mind could be refreshed alongside the body. This was more than a place for washing away dirt or sweat. It was a space for civic identity to flourish. Here, the wealthy patrician rubbed shoulders, literally and figuratively, with freedmen, merchants, and laborers. They came not as equals in wealth or status, certainly, but as participants in the life of the city. Bathing together in these grand halls was a ritual of belonging, a daily reminder that every individual was part of a larger whole, the Roman Empire itself. In this way, the Thermae Agrippae was an imperial statement cast in stone, marble, and steam. You belong to something greater than yourself. It was a unifying force, a social leveler in an empire defined by hierarchy. But the story of Agrippa and his baths is not one of detached grandeur. Unlike many powerful figures who might supervise such projects from afar, issuing orders behind closed doors and then disappearing, Agrippa was deeply hands-on. He did not merely sign contracts and delegate. Instead, he walked the very streets where the baths were being built. He studied the blueprints with a keen eye, jotting down notes in the margins, adjusting plans to better fit the needs of the city and its people. He engaged with the workers, the craftsmen, laborers, and engineers, listening to their concerns, inspiring their efforts, and making sure every stone was set with care. This personal dedication extended beyond construction. Agrippa frequently paid for repairs and maintenance out of his own pocket, long after the initial stones had been laid. He understood that such a monumental public service required constant attention, that the baths needed to remain places of comfort and pride for Romans of all walks of life. And Agrippa did this again and again, common memory. The tourists crowding Rome's famous piazzas, and the locals going about their daily lives, may not recognize the man who quietly shaped the flow of water that sustained the empire. But when you see a fountain bubbling gently in a piazza, or catch sight of the crumbling spine of an aqueduct etched against the Roman skyline, you are touching a legacy he forged. When you imagine Roman citizens slipping into a caldarium, the warm bathhouse pool after a day's grueling labor, or hear the imagined murmur of voices echoing through marble halls, you are stepping into the world Agrippa helped create. Because while emperors ruled Rome with iron fists and armies, wielding power in grand spectacle and conquest, Agrippa ruled with something less visible, but no less essential: order. He governed the lifeblood of the city, not its legions or senators, but its water. He turned Rome from a city of dust and brick into a metropolis where clean water flowed freely, where citizens could wash away the grime of the streets in public baths. For all the grandeur of Rome's towering temples, its thunderous legions, its parade of emperors, the true genius of the empire lay in the simple, sustaining gifts of warm baths and fresh water. It was Agrippa who built the arteries through which that life-giving fluid pulsed. He who brought order to the chaos of city living by restoring aqueducts, laying pipes, and constructing vast reservoirs. He gave Rome not just infrastructure, but dignity. Clean water was a symbol, a promise that the empire cared for its people, that civilization was possible. As we stand in modern Rome, surrounded by ruins and relics, it's easy to forget that beneath these stones once flowed a network designed by a man who did not seek fame but shaped history. Gentle transition, and so, as the sun dips low in the ancient Roman sky, whether imagined or captured by twilight on a Roman afternoon, we take one last look at Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, the man who built warmth and water into the very fabric of the empire. We step back now slowly, deliberately, from the vaulted stone baths and the restored aqueducts that once breathed life into the city. From the fountains where citizens gathered to the underground cisterns that quietly held their precious liquid treasure, we retreat into the quiet. But our journey does not end here. No, we are not done wandering. No, for beneath the grandeur and beneath the surface, the city hides secrets. Ruins whisper stories untold. Mosaics gleam with forgotten symbols. Old bronze taps, long corroded, still guard their mysteries. And cryptic inscriptions, carved in worn Latin, tease archaeologists and historians with puzzles from the past. What have they uncovered beneath the bathhouses of Rome? What strange artifacts lie buried in the dust beneath the stones? What stories of ancient life, both ordinary and extraordinary, wait to be uncovered? The baths were not just places for washing. They were places of social ritual, of political conversation, even of superstition. Beneath their floors and walls, archaeologists have found curious objects, small charms, hairpins, children's dolls, hidden deliberately, perhaps to bring luck or ward off evil spirits. In one bathhouse excavated in North Africa, tiny lead tablets inscribed with curses defixions were discovered, folded, and tossed into drains beneath the pools. These tablets, carrying secret wishes for vengeance or justice, suggest that Romans carried their passions and fears into these public spaces. The flowing water was sometimes seen as a conduit, not just of cleanliness, but of spiritual energy and magic. Tossing a curse into a drain might have been a way to send one's intentions to the gods or spirits below. Imagine the bathhouse as a stage for many dramas: political intrigue, personal rivalries, and whispered secrets. Not just a place of leisure, but a crossroads of lives and stories. The physical remains, the pipes, the pools, the mosaic floors, are only part of the story. Beneath the surface, the baths tell us about the hopes, the fears, and the daily lives of a civilization long vanished. As we continue our journey into this hidden past, we walk with archaeologists and historians, piecing together clues from the dust. We touch the pulse of an ancient world, not just in grand monuments, but in the subtle traces left behind by ordinary people. So let us wander onward, from the stones that Agrippa laid with care, to the whispered magic hidden beneath the baths, to the echoes of lives long gone. Our journey continues into the mystery, into the buried stories, into the heart of Rome's ancient soul. Let us drift now into a quieter corridor of the Roman bathhouse, not one filled with voices, laughter, or the splash of water, but one thick with stillness and curiosity. In this softer part of our journey, we won't follow the crowd. Instead, we'll linger where silence holds sway and where the walls still seem to hum with secrets. We are stepping away from the bustle of Roman life to gently peel back the layers of routine and explore the forgotten meanings, invisible beliefs, and subtle mysteries embedded in the act of bathing in ancient Rome. At first glance, the those grand public bathhouses appear as places of cleanliness, exercise, and community. Vast stone halls filled with steam and conversation. They seem functional, perhaps indulgent, social spaces, no doubt, where Romans gathered daily, not only to bathe, but to meet friends, do business, or share gossip. But if we pause for a moment, if we lean in just a little closer, run our fingers across the worn mosaics, or follow the path of the fading daylight through the arched windows, we begin to sense something else, something older, quieter, almost sacred. The bath as a spiritual rhythm in the Roman mind. Bathing was not only about washing away sweat or grime, it was a daily restoration of inner balance, a moment to reset both body and spirit. Though not tied directly to temple or deity, bathing held a kind of quiet reverence. It wasn't sacred in the religious sense, but it had its own atmosphere of devotion, like a secular ritual performed not in a sanctuary, but in heated stone chambers filled with steam. The process itself followed a distinct choreography. First, the palestra courtyard for stretching or wrestling. Then, a gradual passage through the tepidarium into the caldarium, followed by a plunge into the frigidarium, and finally rest. This was not rushed, it was savored. It was a rhythm, repeated across lifetimes. Many Romans believed that bathing did more than clean the skin, it realigned the elements of the body. In Roman medicine and philosophy, balance was everything. Hot and cold, dry and wet, wind and water, bile and blood. A bathhouse, with its perfectly engineered sequence of temperature and atmosphere, was a machine for restoring harmony within. Even the architecture seemed to participate in this belief. The hottest rooms were aligned to catch the afternoon sun. Cold pools were buried behind thick walls to remain dark and cool. Ventilation systems channeled heat with almost surgical precision. To modern eyes, it all seems practical, but to the Roman, it was purposeful. It reflected a deep desire to live in tune with the natural and cosmic order. Whispers of the unseen over time, archaeologists have found odd little objects buried beneath the stones of these bathhouses. Not just coins or sandals, but stranger things, small lead tablets, etched with curses defixings folded tightly and tossed into the drains, little dolls. Fragments of charms, pieces of bone, tokens of intention. Why would someone hide such things beneath the place where they came to cleanse? Because, to some, the bath was more than a building. It was a threshold, a liminal space where the physical met the emotional, where water didn't just rinse away dirt, it carried words, memories, and wishes. Some believed that the water could listen, or that it could speak. If someone had insulted you in the changing room, or embarrassed you in the wrestling yard, you might not shout or strike. Instead, you could slip away quietly, visit a local scribe, and pay a few coins to have a curse written. You'd carry that tiny tablet in your sleeve. Later, alone by the pool, you'd drop it into the water, whispering your grievance, not to the bather, but to the spirits beneath the earth, to the hidden ones. The bath, in this sense, became a kind of private altar, a place where emotions were not just soothed but expressed. Before stepping into the hot rooms, Romans would coat themselves in oils scented with herbs, pressed from olives, sometimes imported at great expense. Then came the strigil, a curved metal blade used to scrape oil, sweat, and dirt from the skin. To us, it might sound harsh, but for the Roman, it was restorative. The scraping was symbolica, shedding of the day's filth, of disorder, even of sorrow. But the symbolism didn't end there. Sometimes, the oil scraped from the bodies of gladiators or performers was collected, bottled, sold in marketplaces as an aphrodisiac or remedy. Imagine that. The sweat of a champion offered as medicine. The belief that the essence of a person, his strength, his allure, could be captured in oil, touched, transferred. Here, the line between health and magic, cleanliness and belief, thinned almost to nothing. The theater of bathing. To bathe in Rome was also to participate in a performance. Who you bathed with mattered. How you walked through the arches, how your servant held your towel, whether you arrived alone or with a retinue, it all said something. Bathing was a stage where status played out in silence, in linen robes, in posture, in the choice of scented oils. And yet, not everyone played along. Some Romans resisted. They bathed in solitude, or not at all. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote that the noise of the public baths, the slaps, the shouts, the groans, was unbearable. He disliked the vanity, but even he, despite his disapproval, couldn't fully escape the pull of the thermi. They were too central, too woven into the fabric of Roman time. Ruins that still whisper now. Centuries later, we walk through ruins where roofless walls frame open sky. The pools are dry, the voices gone, but beneath our feet, the stone still remembers. Archaeologists trace ancient plumbing now, filled with sediment, and find mineral stains where hot water once flowed. Some pipes still echo faintly when tapped, as if the bathhouse is breathing in sleep. And perhaps it is, because what remains is not just architecture, it is intention, repetition, a vanished world of sensation and symbol. The Roman bath was more than a structure. It was a daily ritual of becoming whole again, not just cleaner, but lighter, more balanced, more human. Even now, in dreams or imagination, we might find ourselves stepping again into that warm chamber where breath meets steam and silence carries memory. There existed a more intimate rhythm, one that unfolded behind marble walls and beneath vaulted ceilings, the daily ritual of bathing. To the modern eye, the Roman thermathos, grand public bathhouses, might seem like early prototypes of spas or gymnasiums devoted to hygiene, leisure, and social life. But to the Romans, bathing was not merely a physical act. It was a form of self-alignment, a way to reconnect with one's body, one's thoughts, and one's place within the cosmic balance. For them, to bathe was to restore ordo, the Latin concept of order and harmony, both within the body and in the world. In this way, bathing in Rome bore subtle spiritual undertones. It was not worship in the temple sense, not a tribute to Jupiter or Mars, but it carried its own quiet holiness, a secular sacredness, like a ritual performed not out of obligation, but out of a deep cultural instinct. You bathed to become clean, but also to become whole. The bathhouses themselves were constructed with astonishing thoughtfulness. Their beauty was not simply decorative, it reflected deeper intentions. The caldarium, the hot room, was often oriented to catch the full blaze of the sun at midday, flooding it with natural heat and light. Thick marble benches absorbed this warmth and radiated it into the space, encouraging sweat and relaxation. In contrast, the frigidarium, or cold pool, was usually tucked behind thick walls, shaded and recessed almost, like a sanctuary of stillness. These choices may have been practical, but they also followed an unspoken pattern, the interaction of opposites, heat and cold, light and shadow, activity and rest. To the Roman mind, these elemental contrasts were not coincidental. They were part of a wider worldview, inherited from both Stoic philosophy and humoral medicine. Just as a body needed a balance of fluids, blood, bile, phlegm, so too did a person require a balance of experiences. A hot plunge followed by a cold shock, an oily massage followed by a scraping strigil, loud chatter in the tepidarium followed by quiet reflection in the corners of the laconicum. The bathhouse was a mirror of this philosophy, designed not only to cleanse, but to recalibrate. The cleansing of the spiritus. What did it mean, then, for a Roman to say they felt renewed after a bath? We find such expressions in poems, letters, and inscriptions. Ex balnees, ready, et spiritum in vini. I have returned from the baths and found my spirit. The word spiritus in Latin carried more than a simple meaning of breath. It was the animating force of the body, the life energy, the soul's gentle whisper. Bathing, then, was believed to wash not only the skin, but to unburden the spiritus. It lifted away irritability, melancholy, fatigue. It soothed tempers and settled the mind. Some Romans even suggested that bathing could offer relief from emotional wounds, grief, humiliation, or anxiety. A man troubled by political betrayal might slip into the warm waters, not to forget, but to recenter himself. A young woman mourning a lost love might bathe, not for pleasure, but for composure. In this way, the bath became not only physical therapy, but emotional hygiene, a kind of ancient mindfulness, where one's body and breath were the only things asked to be noticed, moment to moment. A daily rite of social readiness. Bathing was also a form of social preparation. You did not emerge from the bath merely scrubbed. You emerged reassembled. The oil had softened your skin. The strigil had scraped away fatigue. The cold plunge had sharpened your senses. Now you were ready to return to the forum, the feast, the debate. You were presentable, composed, and respectable. In fact, the act of bathing had moral and social weight. A person who neglected the baths might be seen as slovenly, unhealthy, even suspicious. Roman authors occasionally scorned those who avoided public bathing, viewing it as a rejection of communal values. To bathe was not only to clean, it was to show that you cared about how you appeared before the eyes of others. But there was another layer as well. Bathing made everyone, regardless of status, briefly equal. In the warm mist of the caldarium, senators and scribes, soldiers and slaves could sit shoulder to shoulder. Bodies glistened alike with oil and sweat. Rank dissolved into steam. Status returned only once the clothes came back on. What makes the Roman bath so fascinating is that it was one of the few daily practices that carried the weight of ritual without requiring a god. There was no priest, no altar, and yet the movements, the oiling, the scraping, the immersion, the rest had a rhythm that was unmistakably sacred. It was a practice passed down through generations, a cultural inheritance that required no faith to feel holy. This kind of secular sanctity is rare in history, and yet perhaps that is why it endured for so long. For a while, temples fell out of use and rituals shifted with the rise of Christianity. The practice of bathing, of caring for the self as a complete being. Even today, when we sink into a warm bath or step into a hot shower after a long day, there is something in that moment that echoes the Roman spirit. Not just a desire to wash, but a longing to return to balance, to feel once again like ourselves, the strange artifacts left behind. It is tempting to think of Roman bathhouses as places of purification, comfort, and controlled ritual spaces where hot water and marble came together to create moments of reflection and restoration. But just beneath the surface, sometimes literally archaeologists have found evidence of another, more hidden world. A world not of polished conversation or well-oiled backs, but of quiet curses, whispered hopes, and secret intentions buried under stone. Across the Roman world, bathhouses have yielded curious, intimate artifacts. These were not the kind of ceremonial items you'd find in a temple or on a battlefield. Instead, they were small, personal objects: bronze hairpins, worn-out children's dolls, finger-sized clay figurines, glass beads, and protective charms shaped like eyes, phalluses, or animals. These items weren't necessarily lost by accident. Many were deliberately buried under thresholds, hidden in drain systems, or sealed within foundations during construction. And then there are the Difictions, thin etched lead tablets that carry an air of deliberate secrecy. One particularly intriguing find comes from a bathhouse in Roman North Africa, where archaeologists unearthed several folded lead sheets hidden deep within the drainage tunnels beneath the baths. These were no ordinary debris. When carefully unrolled and read under bright archaeological lights, they revealed curses, messages written in cramped, almost panicked script. Some were hexes aimed at enemies. Others were love spells. Many invoked chthonic deities, spirits of the underworld, or the darker aspects of Roman religion. One such curse might read, "May Gaius, who wronged me in the Palestra, lose his strength. May his muscles fail him. May his pride fall to shame. Or, let Livia be bound in heart and mind to me. Let her eyes see only me, even in her dreams." These weren't placed at random. The bathhouse, with its constant flow of water, heat, and cleansing ritual, was a perfect spiritual gateway. To the ancient mind, water didn't just clean, it carried, and what better carrier for a wisher, accursed, than the flowing current that passed through stone and into the dark unknown, or water as medium, drain as portal. The ancient Romans lived in a world where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural were far more porous than our own. Everything held potential meaning: the direction of a bird's flight, the shape of spilled oil, a strange illness, a poorly timed dream. And baths where people were stripped of their clothing and inhibitions, where water coursed through the veins of a stone building, where heat opened pores and minds alike became places where the seen and unseen overlapped. It is perhaps no accident that these lead curses were so often found in drains. The Roman drain system, known as the cloaca, was the literal underworld of the city. Water disappeared into its shadows, never to be seen again. Just as the living sent their dead below the earth, so too of oils and strigils, long before one could slip into the marble warmth of a Roman bath. There was a preparation ritual, one that speaks volumes about Roman ideas of health, beauty, and even sanctity. Before stepping into the pools, bathers would coat their skin in fragrant oils, rich, herbal, sometimes infused with exotic ingredients brought from distant parts of the empire. To the modern observer, this might sound like indulgent self-care, a kind of luxury spa treatment. But for the Romans, oiling the body was more than vanity. It was medicine. It was hygiene. And for some, it may even have bordered on the spiritual. The Romans believed that oil had the power to draw impurities from the skin. Unlike soap, which was not widely used in Roman times, oil was thought to gently coax out dirt and sweat. The oil seeped into the skin, softened it, and prepared it for what came next. The strigil. The strigil was a small, curved tool typically made of bronze or iron, with a long handle and a blade-like loop at the end. It resembled a flexible sickle or an artist's palette knife. Once the bather was fully coated in oil, a servantor, in some cases, the bather themselves would scrape the skin from neck to heel. The motion was practiced, rhythmic, and surprisingly thorough. The blade would pull away the oil, now mixed with sweat, dust, and dead skin, leaving behind a soft, almost glowing surface. To us, this scraping might sound severe, but to the Roman, it was refreshing, necessary, even comforting. It was how they removed the day, not just its physical grime, but perhaps something deeper. Just as one might feel reborn after a modern sauna or deep massage, the Roman strigil offered more than exfoliation. It was a symbolic reset, a gentle erasure of the mundane and the impure. But this daily ritual held stranger currents. In certain circles, especially among fans of athletic games or gladiatorial combat, something unusual happened. The residutha, sweaty, oily gunk collected by strigils, was not thrown away. It was saved. Sometimes, it was carefully scraped from the skin of famous gladiators, victorious charioteers, or adored actors. This mix of oil, sweat, and skin cells, known as gladiator unguentum, was believed to hold special power. Bottles of this strange concoction could be found in marketplaces, tucked among incense and perfume stalls. They were sold quietly and at a premium to those who believed. To some, the mixture had medicinal properties. It was thought to soothe aching joints, heal blemishes, or imbue one's body with strength and virility. To others, it was an erotic elixir, physical link to the body of a man admired, idolized, or perhaps even loved. In a culture where celebrity was deeply tied to physical performance where muscles, scars, and sweat were signs of both power and sacrifice, this oily essence became more than waste. It became relic. Imagine now a small alcove in a Roman bath complex. It's quiet, a little shadowed, set apart from the larger chambers where men soak and socialize. Here, a vendor waits behind a marble counter. Before him sit small ceramic vials, each sealed with wax. You step forward. He offers you a knowing smile and uncorks one of them. Inside, the faint, musky scent of oil infused with cedarwood, perhaps, or myrrh, something else, something human. He tells you this one comes from Marcus, the undefeated, a gladiator with 8 wins and a near-mythic reputation. You buy a dab. He tells you to rub it on your neck before speaking to the woman you love, or on your wrist before an important speech. He says it carries luck, or confidence, or charm. You nod, though you're not sure if you believe, but still you carry it with you. And in that moment, you're not just wearing oil, you're wearing fame. This curious practice hints at how thin the line was in Roman life between hygiene and magic, between self-care and worship. The bathhouse wasn't only a place to restore health, it was a temple of the body, where every step of the ritual oil, strigil, steam, so carried a deeper meaning. And in this temple, the bodies of the admired became icons, their sweat, their essence, their oils transformed from waste into artifact, from residue into ritual. There were even rumors, preserved in fragmentary texts, of wealthier women applying gladiator oil to their faces before bed. A beauty secret, a mystical touch of strength. Some believed it tightened the skin. Others thought it brought dreams of the warrior whose essence it held. This strange trade thrived quietly, mostly among urban elites and those swept up in the fever of the arena. But it reminds us how deeply Roman culture was intertwined with symbolism. Even the simplest actions, rubbing oil, scraping skin, could take on layers of meaning when the body was viewed as both vessel and idol. Today, when we look at strigils behind glass in museums, they appear so mundane, so old metal tools with a curve. But in their time, they were instruments of transformation. They connected flesh to ritual, sweat to story. They carried away not just dirt, but the weight of daily life. And so, the next time you step into a shower or apply lotion to your arms, remember, somewhere in the ruins of Rome, beneath centuries of dust and silence, a small bottle waits, sealed, forgotten, and inside, perhaps still faintly fragrant, is the breath of a legend, the sheen of a fighter, the whisper of a ritual we no longer quite understand. The line between cleanliness and cult, between wellness and wonder, was much thinner than we assume. Let us now ascend from the smoky depths of the furnace tunnels, where workers toiled and fire roared unseen, from the tiled halls of the bathhouse, where sandals echoed and voices rose in laughter, gossip, and the splash of water. We climb upward gently into another Roman world entirely. This one is quieter, softer. It lives in the hush between footsteps and the whisper of silk brushing mosaic floors. The air here is perfumed with rosewater and crushed bay leaves. The clatter of tools and the hum of crowds do not reach these halls. Instead, there is only the trickle of fountains, the rustle of linen curtains, and the occasional low murmur of cultured conversation. This is the world of the patricians, the Roman elite. Close your eyes and imagine you are one of them. Perhaps a senator born into the ancient bloodlines of Rome, or perhaps the wife of a powerful statesman wrapped in finely woven stole, dyed with Tyrian purple, a color so rare and costly it speaks your name before you ever do. Your villa stands proudly atop the Palatine Hill, Rome's most prestigious address. From your garden terrace, the city unfolds below like a living mosaic, temples, markets, colonnades, and courtyards, all stitched together by avenues of stone. You do not walk those streets without purpose. You do not shout to be heard. You exist above the city's urgency, in a realm of marble columns, shadowed porticos, and still pools that reflect both sky and self. Your morning begins not with alarm or task, but with ritual and ease. Servants have risen before you. They prepare your bath, perhaps warmed with scented oil. They lay out your tunic or robe in careful folds. If the weather is warm, they mix snow imported from the mountains into your wine. This is no indulgence. It is expectation. Your body, like your name, must be tended with precision. The walls of your private chamber are painted in rich frescoes, scenes of myth and legend. Apollo rides his golden chariot across your ceiling. Neptune rises eternal from a sea of painted blue. Even your dreams are watched over by gods. Light enters, not in shafts, but in veils, filtered through linen screens and half-closed shutters. You may wake slowly. There is no field to plow, no stall to sweep. Your labors are different, political, poetic, performative. By mid-morning, you stroll through the atrium, where clients wait. These are lesser men, bound to you by ancient systems of patronage. They come to offer their loyalty, their small tributes, their attention. You offer your favor word, here, a letter there. This exchange is theater. You are both audience and actor. Their respect maintains your status. Your patronage maintains their survival. Later, perhaps seated on a carved wooden chair or reclining on a low couch, you dictate letters to a scribe. each phrase crafted with care in stylized Latin, written not for speed, but for beauty. These letters may go to other patricians, to governors or generals. You are not simply writing, you are performing identity. When business ends, the day still stretches wide before you. Lunch prandium is light, bread still warm from the oven, goat cheese laced with herbs, olives, a single fig split with a silver knife. You eat reclined, never rushed. Meals are not consumed, they are experienced, a slow unfolding of taste, talk, and time. Afternoons hold possibility. You might sit beneath your garden's fig trees and host a philosophical discussion, an old friend quoting Plato, a visiting poet debating Stoic virtue, or perhaps you retreat into your library. You unroll a scroll of Ovid or Seneca, or a favorite treatise on law and rhetoric. You read not for escape, but for refinement. And when the sun grows high and the marble floors grow warm beneath bare feet, you may descend just briefly to the public baths, but you do not mix freely with the crowds. You arrive with attendants. You move from caldarium to tepidarium to frigidarium in orchestrated calm. You do not scrub your own skin. A servant does that. You do not fetch your own towel. Another holds it ready. The bath is for relaxation, but it is also for display of wealth, of grace, of leisure. Evening comes. Rome glows golden in the last light, and the Senna begins. This is the main meal of the Daon, the centerpiece of elite social life. You recline on plush couches arranged around low tables. Friends, family, clients, and guests gather beneath high, painted ceilings. Lamps flicker. Musicians play softly from the corner. The courses arrive, one after another. Stuffed dormice with poppy seeds, eggs of exotic birds, lightly pickled, fish glazed in sweet garum, the fermented sauce beloved by Romans. Each dish is not just nourishment, it is spectacle, a story, a flex of culinary prestige, and all the while, conversation wins its way through the evening. A visiting poet recites newly composed verses no one critiques, though all listen. There is laughter, yes, but it is measured. There may be argument, but it is scholarly, and performed like fencing legend, controlled, respectful. By nightfall, the lamps dim. You return to your chamber. The city hums below. The wind stirs the laurel trees outside your villa, and your bed awaits a frame of carved wood, a mattress stuffed with goose down, linen dyed soft hues. You may not sleep immediately. You may write or dictate again, or perhaps you stand by the window and look down at the city below. You see rooftops, courtyards, distant torches moving through alleyways. Somewhere, a soldier changes watch. A baker begins their dough. A slave, unseen, scrubs a tiled floor. And you, privileged, protected, praise, drift slowly into dreams, wrapped not only in silk, but in certainty. But even for the elite, the days were not always peaceful. There were rumors, there were rivals, whispers of poison slipped into wine. The emperor's mood shifting like a breeze, and with it pure fate. Power in Rome was intoxicating, but never permanent. Still, tonight, we let all that fade. Tonight, we rest in the imagined serenity of their world, not to envy, not to judge, but simply to observe, to see what it felt like, if only for a moment, to walk in those sandals, to breathe in that rarefied air, to live above the city, in a villa built from ambition and adorned in myth. And now, as the flickering light of ancient oil lamps gives way to the cool hush of midnight, as the last footsteps echo softly across marble, and the wind carries Latin prayers out into the open sky. We bring our journey to its close. The bathhouses grow silent, the fires burn low, the gods sleep behind their painted frescoes, and so we sleep too. Good night, ancient Rome. And now, dear listener, let us gently step back from the echoing chambers of ancient bathhouses, from the polished mosaic floors, still damp from centuries of forgotten footsteps, from the steam rising in hazy curls through vaulted ceilings, and the quiet elegance of silk brushing against skin. Let us return to now. You have traveled across centuries tonight, not with sandals on your feet, nor with a scroll in hand, but with imagination, that quiet, persistent time machine of the mind. You've wandered down narrow alleys once trodden by slaves, merchants, matrons, and philosophers. You've paused beside pools of hot water where strangers once debated, whispered, and dreamed. You've stood among the marble colonnades of Roman villas, heard the hush of feathered fans and the slow cadence of learned speech, and felt, perhaps for a moment, what it was to live in a world long gone. And as you lie there now, surrounded by the hush of your own time, your room lit only by the gentlest shadows, your breath slow, steady, and warm, you may still sense the echoes, a faint whisper of dripping water, the brush of linen across smooth skin, the soft scrape of a strigil on oiled shoulders, or the distant murmur of Latin, a language once shouted in marketplaces and whispered in temples, now heard only by memory. But here, now, there is no bath to draw, no furnace to stoke, no meal of dormice or honeyed wine to prepare. There is no toga to fold, no villa to manage, no letter to dictate. Here, there is simply stillness, the gentle comfort of a bed, the low hum of the quiet night, and the knowledge that you are far from the fires of Rome, yet still touched by its glow. Because Rome, for all its grandeur, its columns, its laws, its gods, was never meant to last forever. Its streets filled with life once, yes, with triumphs and tragedies, labor and luxury, but its walls cracked, its fountains ran dry, its libraries burned, and its voices faded. Emperors rose in golden cloaks and fell in silence. Poets wrote of glory, and then were forgotten. Even the mighty aqueducts, once pulsing with water and pride, now sleep in broken arches under modern skies. But still, something lingers. Not power, not empire, but memory, quiet memory. Tonight, that memory stirred again, not with conquest, but with care, not to boast, but to soothe, to remind us that even in the cold stone of history, there are warm lives etched into the cracks. The mother washing her child in a public pool, the laborer scraping coins together for a visit to the frigidarium, the senator gazing at the stars from a marble balcony, wondering if Rome's greatness would outlast even his name. Tonight, you became their companion, if only in thought, only in stillness. You walked with them, listened, saw, and now you return, not unchanged perhaps, but calmed, because history, at its best, doesn't just teach, it slows us down. It holds up a mirror to our own lives, and it says, look, breathe, rest. You are not in the Roman Empire, but you are in your own time, your own story, your own quiet night. So let the weight of centuries fall away now. Let the bustle of bathhouses fade. Let the painted gods return to their walls. Let the footsteps in marble corridors grow quiet. And as your eyelids grow heavier and your thoughts soften at the edges, let yourself drift gently, like incense rising in a temple courtyard, like candlelight flickering across a bronze mirror, like time itself, vast, slow, eternal. Let sleep carry you with the same ease the aqueducts once carried water. Let your dreams wander among ruins and olive groves, over hills where poets once walked barefoot, and through gardens where peacocks strolled beneath cypress trees. The world will wait, but tonight you rest. And as the ancient oil lamps are snuffed, and the last echoes of marble footsteps are wrapped in silence, we bring this journey to its close. Thank you for traveling with us. Thank you for listening, for imagining, for remembering. Until next time, may history soothe you. May time be gentle with you, and may your dreams carry you softly, far, far away. Good night.